What is up, people? It is Dave, Duncan Kyle, back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. And for this review, Duncan Kyle and I have been checking out the new album from Kataklysm frontman Maurizio Iacono. His new band Invictus will release their new album Unstoppable on October 21st via MNRK Heavy.
MNRK!
Every time. Yep. Well-respected singer of Kataklysm and ex-Dio, El Jefe of Hard Impact Artist Management, founder of Distortion Music Group, and co-owner of Hard and Heavy booking agency Continental Touring, Iacono delivers dynamic new layers of heaviness and melody with his latest creative vehicle.
What a lazy bastard. I mean, what a lazy bastard.
It really is. I've explored many facets of the music business, from performing, writing and producing to managing, he explains, but I've never explored that deep down energy inside my thoughts, which drives me to compete and in many ways survive everything thrown at me. The 11 songs which comprise his debut offer an unflinching view of an unbreakable spirit, examined through the lens of ambitious, unapologetic heavy music. Iacono executed his vision alongside longtime collaborator J.F. Dagenais, I think that's how you pronounce it, from Kataklysm and ex-Dio, and producer, main songwriter Chris Clancy. Powerhouse drummer Jeremy Kling from Venom Inc. and Inhuman Condition rounds out the record.
So I think we can safely say here, a talented group of people.
Yes, indeed.
A busy, talented group of people.
Yes.
Doing it. Is this a super group? Can we call it a super group? Are half those bands still on the go now?
I think they'll Inhuman Condition had a new album out this year or last year. Venom Inc. just released something as well.
Right here. Invictus, super group.
Yeah, good dude.
Super. Dude, it's our show.
Yeah.
Okay, see if we call it.
Super group.
Super group.
You heard it here first.
That's right. This album came with a cape. Super group.
Invictus offers nothing less than authentic, free expression like the best of heavy music's history. It's very straightforward. Maurizio promises it's a real record and it's not afraid of anything. So, we reacted to one of the singles from the album. I think it was called Exiled, I think the track was.
Yeah, so this was delayed, wasn't it? Because it feels like we reacted to that a year ago. It wasn't a year ago, obviously, but it was several months ago, and I think the release was imminent off the back of that, and ultimately it was pulled for a little bit, and then I think they've released like about another 3. And a lot of singles released from it. I get like emails from MNRK every other week talking about Invictus, so I was fully ready for this to drop in the inbox.
Yeah.
Like, it kind of felt like we're blue-balled enough, Dave.
Yeah.
God, there's a lot of cock references in our comments. I don't know why.
So, I mean, I was always kind of interested in this. I'm a fan of Kataklysm, have been for a long time. I think Maurizio is a very well-accomplished frontman. But I was interested to hear what type of album he was going to give us with this project. Because he's dabbled in various projects and styles in the past. And I think like his statement of it being a kind of like straightforward album is
no frills.
Yeah, it's pretty accurate. We said straightforward. I mean, like it kind of delivers the qualities of a kind of modern metal album. And straight away you can hear that on You Will Know Who I Am. When that kicks in, I was like, this is like kind of how it's almost like how Burn My Eyes kicks open with a kind of like Davidian type feel to it.
Yep.
Has that same type of kind of ferocity and pace. There's loads of double kick drums, driving riffs, and really kind of vicious vocals. There's maybe a hint more of almost a hint more of death metal in this, but than like a band like Machine Head anyway. But it also feels like more up to date than an album like Burn My Eyes as well, and both the production and the kind of style of the riffs. It does have. There's a couple of kind of Kataklysm characteristics, but you're not going to get away from that, considering this has got the guitarist and the vocalist from that band. And there's a almost kind of like Lamb of God type kind of rhythm to it as well. But it's got this kind of big dose of almost like modern metalcore added to it as well. And the modern metalcore type sound, musically and vocally, opens up to kind of more variation and delivers that kind of contrast, the kind of light and shade on this album. And that carries throughout most of the album, which I really like, because I think the clean vocals are one of the highlights on this album.
Chef's kiss. Yeah.
In my opinion, I think Chris Clancy has a voice made for those big melodic choruses, much like a kind of Matt Heafy or almost like a Phil Labonte from All That Remains, that type of thing. He has that type of tone, very easy on the ear, and his melodies are spot on. It's not anything I've not heard before, but it's very well done. And I think when him and Maurizio kind of duel up on the heavy and light stuff, I think that works really well. It's a really cool dynamic. As you'd expect from a band like this, you're going to get a varied mix of different rhythms and tempos and styles. It's got the big stomping grooves, it's got the fast, hard-hitting kind of thrashier moments, a little streak of that kind of modern death metal, but they don't lean into that too much, because then it might start to sound too much like a Kataklysm. And then you've also got that kind of metalcore catchiness that's there to provide the kind of hooks of the album. They also feed in a little bit of synth work now and again on like tracks like Weaponized, and that just kind of adds a little bit more size, a little bit more kind of depth to the sound. My main issue with this album is this album to me feels way too late, and I don't mean it's been delayed by a month. I mean like
no, it's like this album had come out in like 2003.
Exactly. I was just going to say,
would have been like, yeah. Oh, what like we're peaking here. It is like it's early 2000s metalcore.
Absolutely.
Which is not a bad thing, because metalcore's moved on, but that nostalgia for that genre, it's evolved. It's evolved quite a bit since then. So
when I listen to this now, I feel like there's so many bands that sound like this that there's a lot of it doesn't overly stand out to me, and part of that is because the album doesn't really step out with its comfort zone. Even when they do maybe like increase the little bit of melodic death metal, you hear that on Ghost of My Father, that adding another kind of dimension to their sound, and that's cool. But I've heard it done before. It doesn't, and it's not competing with bands like fucking At the Gates or Dark Tranquillity or even early Soilwork. There's not the same level of originality there, because it's been done so much since that started a long time ago. I found that like the first half of the album, I was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. Yeah, this is not bad. And then as the album went on, I became kind of less and less engaged with it. It does start to feel a little bit repetitive to me. Luckily, the clean vocals do provide something more memorable. So the tracks don't completely like fade into the background. But even at that, I found that the clean vocals do become a little bit predictable as well. Speaking of fades, though, there's a track called... what is the track called? The second American Outcast thing is the second last track, which has a really weird ending. Like, it stops dead after the solo, which felt like the end of the song. But then it comes back in, and they do one more chorus, and then it fades out really quickly. And I was just like, what? I actually rewound it to listen to it again. I was like, what happened there? Like, it just felt like the song had finished. It came right back in and it went right back out. It's just a really strange transition on that one, and it took me completely out of the album when it happened. In terms of the other kind of like instrumentation, the bass is there, right? But it's very under the radar. Like, in terms of the playing on it and the production, it's maybe not a style that has a lot of intricate bass work, but I felt in the kind of meatier, more deathy parts, they could maybe have let loose a little bit more, or even just a little bit more tone in the production. I just felt that it just didn't really appear at all on the album. The drumming, it ticks all the boxes. It's tight, it's got big rapid drum fills, punchy bass drum patterns, but I wouldn't say there was anything here that kind of grabs you and makes you kind of sit up. It kind of does what's required, but not much more. Maurizio sounds as good as he usually does. It's not a huge jump away from the kind of style he does in Kataklysm, to be honest. Although I thought he did a couple of times moved up into a kind of upper register. You heard that on the closing track, Keeping the Wolves at Bay. I thought that was really cool, because he's used to that kind of deeper, more kind of mid-range kind of vocal. So I did enjoy that side of it. For me, it's an okay album. It's played well, and it's produced like a modern metal album, which is, it's huge in sound but not huge in character for me. Like, I think that's an issue that carries over into the music. I think it's just lacking a bit of individuality, a bit of identity to me. It's not a bad album. I didn't dislike it or hate it. I just found it kind of unremarkable, if I'm honest. What about you guys? Kyle, what did you think of it?
honestly the same from moment one. I was just like,
oh really?
Yeah. It's just like, even the band name and the album artwork didn't grab me at all. It's like Latin name, who gives a fuck? The album artwork looked like it was done in an afternoon, you know? I was like, meh. Just, and then, I mean, that kind of, not that I pay too much attention to album artwork these days. It's not as important as it used to be back, you know, in the 2000s. But yeah, from the first song, I was like, all right, I've heard this before. And then 3 songs in, I was like, I've definitely heard this before. Yeah. The whole thing is just kind of, I don't know, it's a bit, like you said, it's a bit sort of just predictable and done before, and not really, there's not enough of an identity here to really grab you and do anything with you. It's like, it's enjoyable if you just want to have it on in the background, or like have a mosh about. I bet this will kill live. Because it's those kinds of live songs that do really well. But I mean, by the end of it, it's just like, it's got good guitar tones, and the vocalist is savage as fuck. But by the end of it, it's just like, it's all a bit generic, really. It's like, I've heard this 1,000 times by 1,000 different bands, and there are a lot of bands that have done it better than this too. It's not like this is, we're going to take that 2003 metalcore sound and update it and make it fucking awesome. And it's like, we're going to take that sound and just do it. Kind of okay. Like, totally agree with you. Especially about the production, like the drums. I mean, you know, I'm going to mention the fucking drums on this album, man.
Yeah.
They say they have a drummer, but I don't know what they've done with him. The poor guy. He's clearly written the drums and possibly played them, but he is not on this album, and it sucks, because like, it's definitely all replaced drums, and it's stuck to the grid, and the drums sound really small and tinny in comparison to the guitars and the vocals, and even the bass, which isn't really there. You can tell it's a guitar player playing a bass part, which is like, you could have done way more with this album. This sound could lend itself to so much more than what they've done with it.
Yeah,
it's just like, it suffers from being too long as well. It's only 3 minutes? It feels like an hour and 43 minutes at the end. I'm like, fuck, would you just end? There's a couple of songs that was just like, they repeated the chorus again at the end. I was like, just stop. You don't need to do this. Just end it there. Like you were saying, they did the chorus and then the fade out. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Just have some editing, take a quiet moment to reflect, and ask if this is really what you want to do. So I don't think I'll be coming back to this album.
No. Okay. Duncan?
I'm going to put a more positive spin on this, but I don't necessarily disagree with anything that's been mentioned.
Right.
I think there's a stab of nostalgia that comes with this, which for a while scratches an itch.
Okay.
I think you're right. I think there is people my age, that's your age, well, you're technically older.
Dare you?
A bit older than me. Dave's so much older than me. There's a part of me that, like, when this sound was fresh and funky, we were at college and we were consuming a lot of it. Yeah. And then, like you say, and you're right, metalcore kind of became an ugly word. Very much like any genre that becomes the genre for a while, it becomes unfashionable, and those bands still try and carry on. Some of them change their identity. Lamb of God being a prime example. Lamb of God are just as relevant now as they were back then, but they're a band that sound absolutely fuck all like they did back then. So, like, coming down and switching this on, what struck me was, and I had it in my head straight away, is like, there's a little bit of Kill Switch in here, there's a little bit of All That Remains in here, a little bit of Shadow Falls in here, and that's cool. And I you know, once again, I enjoy that sound. God damn it, my fucking album collection of that era had shitloads of bands that sounded like this. So I was in on that level. The problem, and you've mentioned it, and it's a problem on repeat listens, it's not a problem necessarily on the first listen, is that I kind of know what these guys can do elsewhere. And what they can do elsewhere brought into this could make this a bit more interesting, could add a bit more of kind of dynamic and elasticity to the actual sound. It could open it up a lot more, could make it even a little bit more interesting. And it is all well and fair saying this is a straight down the middle album, and it is. This is very no frills. This and it has its sound. By God, you're getting this sound to the end. But I don't think that should ever preclude adding elements in that we know for a fact the musicians can do. Had you told me this was a complete solo project done by just a guitarist, I would totally believe it. Because there's nothing on this out with the melodic vocals that necessarily sounds like anyone else is really bringing anything to the project. It kind of sounds like, and we've had them before, those guitarists of that era were like, my solo album, and you hear it and you're like, well, it's just your riffs with kind of programmed drums or whatever. And that kind of caught me a little bit by surprise, because I really liked that single, and there are at least 4 or 5 songs in here where I think the mix of the metalcore, the aggressive vocals, the bass drum pedaling, the grooves, and then that huge chorus works perfect. Like, his vocals are the melody on this album is pitch perfect for what they're doing, but then the rest is very safe.
Yeah,
and that's what kind of came out. It's a very, 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 very safe album from musicians that are quite a bit into their career now that could actually be a bit unsafe. I've said it before, if you're going to try and, especially if your main band's Kataklysm, if you're going to do something else, why not really go for something bizarre? Why not really push yourself? Because you can do it. So I don't have maybe the same issues with the production. I challenge anyone to name any bass player from any band in the 2000s that played metalcore. I can't remember any of them. You want to know why? Because they're not really on the albums. Production didn't lean its way to there, and as a result, they all kind of stuck to whatever was being played on the guitars. So that kind of fit the bill for me. Yeah, it could probably be a bit higher in the mix. It would have certainly made it heavier. It's not really there. Drumming is unremarkable, but it's tight. And whether it's a machine, whether it's a machine or not, it works with what they're doing. That's the thing. It works perfectly with what they're doing, but it's not. It doesn't stand out. The guitar riffs, those moments where they hit a bit of death metal, are really, really, really cool. And I was like, you could have like a short, like 1.5 minute track which just really fucking goes blast beaty with death metal stuff and all the rest, just to break it out. Just have it, even as an instrumental, it would be something different from the rest of the album. And as a result, you're teased with certain things that you're like, oh, that section could be alright, we're not getting any more of that. That's a bit frustrating to listen to. That being said, if you really, really like music from, 22 years ago now, if you really like that sound and you're like, metalcore doesn't sound like it used to sound, Invictus will scratch that itch. It just doesn't have anything in here that demands that you come back and re-listen to it with any sort of ferocity like those bands did back then. Like Dave says, we've went through about 20 years of this genre now, that at this stage, the ones that you kind of pick up and want to listen to are the ones that kind of know their history, know the sound that they're kind of know the history of the sound, but are doing something interesting with it. And Invictus aren't really doing that. That being said, it's not a bad album. That's the I feel like I'm damning it with faint praise here. It's not a bad album. It's just, I kind of, from that track we heard, I was kind of thinking, well, that's the single. So that's the one that's tailored for the radio.
Yeah.
Or whatever the kids listen to now. I'm really interested to see what the rest is. And the rest is basically that. So yeah, I don't know. It's my positive spin on it. I think it's fine, and I think there's definitely a crowd of people that want to see it. I also think it'll be killer live. But does it actually really ever at any point make me want to listen to the entire album again? Probably not. I'd probably go back to the 3 or 4 songs where I think the balance is just spot on, and the rest kind of feels a bit filler to me. So yeah.
Okay. So scores. What we're thinking for Unstoppable. As I said, I think it's an okay album. I didn't really have any major issues with the production apart from the bass, just needing a bit more presence, I think, in the mix. I think the guy's clean vocals are really good, and I think when he hits those clean choruses, they're excellent. A little bit predictable, but the whole album feels a bit kind of predictable to me. I just feel like it's lacking in a bit of identity, and I totally agree with what you said, Duncan, there. It doesn't make me want to go back and re-listen to it at all. There's nothing really there that I haven't heard done before, or they're doing, remarkably well compared to other bands. It's just kind of alright. It's kind of down the middle. So I'm going to go 2.5 on this one. Kyle, what are you thinking?
I think I had a few more issues than you did on this, so I'm going to come in at 2 out of 5 on this one.
Oh, okay. Duncan?
And keeping with that positive attitude that I have, 3. Like I say, I don't think there's nothing about it that I feel is egregious in any way. I just think that these guys could do better. I think there's a better album for this band, and I'm kind of hoping this isn't just a moonlighting, we're going to put something out whilst all of other bands are doing other things. And I kind of hope that they come back and do another thing, because I think there's an album in them which is better than this.
Yeah. Okay, so Invictus Unstoppable out on October 21st on MNRK Heavy. Links below to the band and to their Bandcamp, so you can check out the album. Let us know what you think. Do you agree?
I literally thought you were going to say links to the band, links to their bank. Cash. I was like, we're doing that then? Here's links to my bank.
Sort code and account numbers below. That is the review. Thank you for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.